Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Aiden on 8cast versus John on Naya Depths. Just kicking off the final installment of his Tabernacle. Must feel fantastic. Love seeing people set long-term goals and just working towards them. It's what life's all about. As full ownership of a deck that he is really mastering here, keeping a hand with a turn 1 Green Sun Zenith into Dryad Arbor. So very important in this deck. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of games where people don't value the early acceleration. They understand how grindy the deck can be. But the reality is if you don't have an explosive early game, you can very often be left in the dust against some of the more dangerous decks in the format. Now, notice Aiden's actually going to be on Death Shadow here, not 8cast. And Snuff Out takes out that Dryad Arbor. So Aiden really understanding how important the acceleration can be. I don't know if, because of the threat density of this deck, if he would have been better off saving it. Let me know if you'd rather hit something like an Elvish Reclaimer or a Knight of the Reliquary with that Snuff Out. Wasteland, leaving Aiden with just a Death Shadow as a permanent. Favorite Magic cards to play with. I don't think I've ever played a match of Death Shadow where I really felt like I played perfectly. I've swept tournaments plenty of times, going 4-0 in small events, even winning big $50 buy-in weekend open style events. But I'll tell you, at every single point, there are so many decisions, and it is pretty much unheard of to really feel like you did them all perfectly. A lot of the time, it's not so much a right or wrong decision. It's almost about probability in terms of how the game might play out from one way or another. Death Shadow, because your entire mana base impacts the size of Death Shadow throughout the matchup, is really difficult to pin down what perfect play would actually be. Right now, this is going to actually force a pump. This Elvish Reclaimer is a 3/4, and Death Shadow currently not big enough to actually trade with it. So there is a block, and we'll likely see this Elvish Reclaimer tutor something up to survive. A Sajiri Step, perhaps. Lots of ways this could go. Got a dark deck. Can't quite make that up. Oh, it is a Sajiri Step. All right, so the Elvish Reclaimer surviving, getting protection from black from that Sajiri Step. Sylvan Safekeeper going to keep everything else protected as well, and now a Maze of Ith going to be able to hold off to this Death Shadow. So this is absolutely not where Shadow wants to be. Storm. So much that's needed to get out of this situation. The Maze of Ith, huge problem. That Elvish Reclaimer, however, makes it really difficult to actually get rid of the Maze of Ith effectively. Being able to sacrifice it. Get another land. If you use a Wasteland, you're basically trading 1 for 0. Baleful Strix joins the board. You know, this card is not going to be great in this matchup. At best, a speed bump against a 20/20. Obviously, a card that lines up very well versus cards like Murktide Regent. Even if they find a Lightning Bolt or Pyroblast later, you've already drawn a card off of it. But in this matchup, really doesn't feel like it does nearly enough. Feels bad when it's not even, doesn't even feel like it's worth the 2 mana to draw the card, because the bird body just not pulling its weight. Is fending off potential attack to a degree, but I mean, it's not like John actually would want to attack from here. He's most likely just looking to make 20/20. So with Aiden's life total as low as it is, we could see him swarm around. Line up well enough. A Sylvan Library, and that is a scary card for Aiden. If that resolves, this could be a significant amount of card advantage. That Elvish Reclaimer can also shuffle. Sylvan Library very often, that first look, if it's not special, a kind of useless card if you don't have the life to spend. Just look at the same 2 cards with a fresh one underneath every time. But when you shuffle with Sylvan Library, much, much better. It recognizes the potential for that card to just blow this match wide open. Forces pitching, Force of Will. A Fatal Push. Another card that really doesn't feel like it's worth the mana. John can just sacrifice a land. Crowd. Not even doing that. Wow. Is rotating a land again with the Elvish Reclaimer. That would be a Sejiri step. Oh, no, actually just getting a plateau. Well, let me know in the comments what I missed there. I feel like that Fatal Push wasn't responded to. Oh, maybe it was a Flagstones of Troy Carr that was sacrificed? Maybe he tutored up a Flagstones. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. I mean, that would be the reason for being able to get the plane. So we've got a Murktide Regent now on board. Oh, and that's just a disaster. So they tell you this when you sign up for Death Shadow School. Do not put out 2 threats. But it's not entirely obvious what to do. You're facing down something like Mazavith. So Murktide Regent got hit with a Swords to Plowshares, ballooning Aiden's life back up over that 12 life necessary to keep the Death Shadow around. So it's a incredibly brutal 2-for-1, getting rid of just like a million points of power off the board. Death Shadow and a Murktide all undone for just 1 mana, and now removal firing back in the other direction just feels futile here. I mean, that's rough. I mean, Snuff Out, again, trying to kill something. John has a myriad of ways of making sure the Snuff Out really doesn't matter. Question of what he decides to do. Maze of Ith doesn't see any threats on the other side of the board, is just going to go ahead and tutor. Keeping an eye on that graveyard. I don't know if it was shortcut last time. It may have been. No, this time it is a Sejiri step. I know if I got that Flagstones line correctly analyzed. Watch these the one time at double speed, so I have a few hundred pairs of eyeballs on this as well. Help pick up any errors I might make. Trying to get back to a video a day on the channel. If you appreciate that, like, subscribe would be great. Love to see these videos get more traction, spread the love of Legacy as far and wide as we can. Thought sees, I believe, a Minskin Boo in hand, but that's a wrap. That board was completely unwinnable at that point. Other cards for those still learning the format, that Knight of the Reliquary, absolutely massive. That's one of the things about this Naya Depths build. Able to drag things out and get so much value out of their creatures. Knight of the Reliquary being absolutely enormous. Elvish Reclaimer being a 1-mana 3/4 as the game unfolds. And of course, their tutoring ability is remarkable, finding answers, responses, and of course the win with Thespian Stage Dark Depths. Something that can happen as soon as turn 3 with this deck. Very easily making a 2020 on turn 3 with a Thespian Stage, Dark Depths, and either a Yavimaya or Mox Diamond along with another land. Very, very dangerous. And that's without playing a spell. You got to remember, very often combo decks kept in check by all of the counter magic in the format. Depth's a different animal where they can potentially beat you without even casting a spell very, very early with not a lot of game action. With Death Shadow, I got to imagine a significant underdog in this matchup. Know in the comments which deck you would think is favored. Appears to me Depths does have a lot of answers and things need to go very, very well for Death Shadow. Mox Diamond, another form of acceleration. Ooh, and Veil of Summer. Talk about having all the answers. Mox Diamond for acceleration, and then Veil of Summer swatting aside that Thoughtseize. Sylvan Library. Last time it hit a Force of Will pitching force. This time it sticks. This could really bury Aiden. The type of card Death Shadow would love to have on board, paying 4 life. Happily pay 8 life to draw a couple of extra cards. Haven't really seen much bug Death Shadow since Deathrite Shaman got the axe. Prior to that, that was the default version. Other consideration there is Sylvan Library doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of life to pay. The rest of the deck is hemorrhaging life, getting those Death Shadows big as quick as possible. Drawing a Sylvan Library after you're already at like 7 life, not so exciting. Elvish Reclaimer, like it'll be ending here. Looted Delta and Wasteland on the side. Aiden's board. Wasteland just waiting for a target. Aiden can fire off his Wasteland to kill the opposing Wasteland. Really needs to keep that Looted Delta around. Watery Grave shocking in. Accompanying Underground Sea. That's actually another card. Speaking of people working towards their goals, Aiden, a college student, got into Legacy with budget builds and saw that line for Death Shadow where it's like, man, you get that Underground Sea. This deck is a real contender. Trading in cards, working towards it. We got a Force of Will pitching Baleful Strix. Protecting this Murktide. Do love to see it. Really, genuinely do. This land for John. Murktide coming in. Like he's considering some plays here. Opposing Wastelands, bit of a pain. Wasteland is often the best answer to Wasteland. Aiden responding. His Wasteland targeted. His Wasteland to target the plateau. Now John going to go ahead and sacrifice. See what he gets. Gonna do a 2020 here. Board order. Thoughtseize. He's a Minskin Boo, a Knight of the Reliquary, and a Crop Rotation. Crop Rotation could pull together a 2020 very, very quickly. Can't quite make out that card. It looks like Flagstones to me. Just 7. Has the ability to tutor up the combo. Crop Rotation and grab a Reclaimer, grabbing the Thespian state. Ooh, and a Pyroblast is found off of that Sylvan. That buys so much time. Murktide is comically undercosted. Such an incredibly strong threat. Floating 1, we've got a Crop Rotation. That Pyroblast resolving may feel like the coast is clear. Some value here. Thespian stage. That should be it, right? Or maybe he doesn't have one floating. Thespian stage. Just a really fun Magic card. One of my favorite interactions is actually using Thespian stage to target a basic land. Response to Wasteland. It rarely comes up, but man, when it does, just brutal. Facing down, a really dangerous board here. 2020 could emerge anytime. Elvish Reclaimer has been so strong. Now a 2/2 Death Shadow. Elvish Reclaimer sacrificing that Thespian stage in response to a Wasteland. And a Surgical in response to that. All the Dark Depths. Really not a major plan here. Like, you'll take it if the line's open, but this Naya Depths deck does not have to make a 2020. This is not at all like the Turbo Depths builds that were like black-green, running Vampire Hexmage, where you realistically, you were just making a 2020 on turn 2 or bust. This has got a ton of mid-rangey cards, a much better deck for Elvish Reclaimer. And, oh, now the Wasteland goes the other way, knocking out Aiden's mana base, and just an enormous Knight of the Reliquary, dwarfing this Death Shadow on the other side. He's supposed to be the big kid on the block. Instead, we're looking at lethal coming through. We might actually just have a chump block from this Knight of the Reliquary. And that's if John doesn't decide to search up a Sajiri step. Shadow doesn't have any type of range. No lightning bolts, fire blasts, anything of the sort. He's have to deal with combat damage with the creature. Got a fetch. And Aiden scoops it up there. Looks like Sajiri step was going to be found, making the Knight of the Reliquary unblockable to push through lethal. Really showcasing the power of this mid-range deck.